Hello and welcome. Today I thought I would talk specifically to those of you who might have never sharpened a razor before or have sharpened a razor a couple of times and maybe are a little bit confused about it. So this video is designed to be for you. I'm purposely going to leave out a lot of detail on sharpening, and I'm going to focus or try to focus on the essentials of what you're trying to accomplish and how to get there. And I'm going to do this from the perspective of my own method of sharpening, sharpening everything really, which includes knives, scissors, saws, and so on, and of course razors. My approach is I think pretty straightforward. I figure out what I want to do, employ the tools that I know how to use to accomplish what I want to do, and then I observe, in this case the razor, I observe what's happening to the razor to help me determine if I'm getting to where I want to get and accomplish what I want to accomplish. So before I go any further, this, by the way, is a gold dollar. This is what a lot of people run out and buy because they're cheap. They're not the greatest razor because the quality of workmanship is all over the place. Some of these come from the factory very nice, some of them do not. And you want to get, if you're going to be doing your first honing, you want to get one of these that's fairly squared away. So before I get to a definition of terms, let me tell you what squared away means. From your perspective, for doing your first sharpening and for only using this razor to sharpen initially, eventually you're going to want to see what the edge feels like, but initially you want to just get your feet wet with sharpening and do it a number of times so that you can get repeatable results. The only thing you're really looking for is that the razor lies flat on one side and then lies flat on another when you torque it lightly down to the stone. If it does that, then you're good to go for the method and principles that I'm going to talk about today. So let me move over to the drawing board for a second just to explain a couple of terms, and then we'll get sharpening. Okay. Here I've annotated some of the parts of a typical straight razor. For most of our discussion in sharpening, we're talking about the spine, the blade itself, and the parts of the blade, the heel, the edge, and the toe. When we're talking about the edge, there are three aspects of the edge that are important. The bevel surfaces, which are these surfaces here, and the apex. And I'm purposely going to leave out the angle between these two bevel surfaces. Matters, but for today's discussion we're going to ignore it. All we're really going to be doing is trying to take a shape that looks kind of like this, grind away material at an angle to create two bevel surfaces that come together at an apex. That's really all sharpening on stones is. And so let's move to the stones and talk a little bit more about that. Now, the first question you're probably going to have if you haven't sharpened a razor before is, what stones should I buy? I get that question all the time. And I don't have a great answer that has one solution to it. What I recommend is that you go and buy splash and go stones, stones that don't require soaking before use, and that you stay with the well-known names. And the well-known names, the two that I would start with would be Naniwa and Shapton. Um, there are offerings by both companies that are very suitable for razor honing, and you want to get the in the Shapton line, the Rockstar series or the Glassstone series or the Kuramatsu series is fine. Any of those are great. The let's see, what did I just say? Did I say Shapton? I think I said Shapton. Then in the Naniwa area, Naniwa Pro, which used to be called Chosera, those are really top of the line. The Arata stones are the same stone, but in a smaller format. Ideally, what you want is a stone that is roughly 8 inches by 3 inches. You can do the conversion to metric if you're a metric person, and that's useful for a razor because you can get most razors almost all the way on the stone with those dimensions, and you have enough length to work the bevel easily. So what am I going to use today? I'm going to use an inexpensive line from Naniwa. These are the Naniwa Advance stones. I don't think they have the labeling on them anymore. These are among the first splash and go stones that Naniwa offered way back in the day. The advantage again of the splash and go is that you don't have to manage the water. After you've taken it out of a soaking tub, it's porous enough that water will run through it, and you constantly have to replenish water on the surface so that you have a sort of a lubrication to help you move over the surface. With splash and go stones, that's not a problem. It's just one less thing to worry about, which is why I recommend them. So getting back to these stones, these are the advanced stones. These are combo stones, meaning there's a different grit on each side. And the advantage of these stones is that they're inexpensive. The disadvantage is that the density of the abrasive in the stone is a little less than the more higher quality stones, and the binder, and I'll explain what that is in a minute, but the binder is also softer and a little bit has a different feel that not everybody likes. So with the higher quality Naniwa stones like the Arata and the Chosera or Naniwa Pro stones, pretty much everybody likes the feel of those stones, but you pay a premium price. Why do I have these stones? Well, it's not really the stone that does the sharpening, it's the sharpener. And while the feel of these stones is a little not quite as good as the high quality stones, it's just fine. You can make these work, not a problem. The other reason I'm using these is that I'm giving them away. So I'll tell you now so you don't have to watch the video if you already know this stuff, but If you're interested in receiving these stones, in the comment section, just leave a comment that says "I'm in," and I'll look at those I'll tabulate those in a few days, and then in an upcoming video I'll do a drawing and give them away. Ideally, I'd like to ship within the continental US, but you know, if you win and you're not in the continental US, we can work something out. All right, so what is a stone? What is a wet stone? What is a water stone? They're all wet stones. Wet is spelled W-H-E-T. These are water stones, and the way they operate like sandpaper, in that there's abrasive in the stone, just as there's abrasive on the surface of sandpaper. A difference is the abrasive in this stone is held in what's known as a binder. I mentioned that word earlier. The binder is designed first to give the stone its shape, and to hold the abrasive. But as you work on the stone, what happens with sandpaper is that you eventually wear the abrasive away. On a water stone, what happens is that as the abrasive wears away, you're wearing away binder with it, and what happens is that fresh abrasive is revealed underneath. As you go through the layers, you have layers of binder and abrasive that you're using, and that's the principle behind a water stone. What's the next thing? The next thing, after you've decided what water stone to get, you're going to need a flattening plate, and I'm going to be giving this one away too. This is a Sharpie flattening plate, purchased very inexpensively off of Amazon. This has a coarse side, which is 320 grit, which is just fine for use, and it has a 1000 grit side, which would be quite useful in doing the early work, the early sharpening work on a razor. Today I'm not going to use this side to do the early work, but it's something that you certainly could use. And again, I'll be giving this away with the Advance combo stones. All right, so we've covered the flattening plate. You need to know how to flatten a stone. So let me show you how you flatten a stone with the flattening plate. And hang on. The first thing you need to do, get the stone wet. Use the appropriate side of the flattening plate. I like to get that wet. And then the next thing to do, hang on, I need to go get a pencil here. The next thing to do is to take your pencil and simply mark the top of the stone. And you know, some people are very meticulous about using cross hatches. It doesn't matter. You just want to mark most of the surface with the pencil. Then take your flattening plate and start removing material. And the idea the idea is that your plate is flat, but your stone is not. And when all of the marks are removed, then the flatness of the plate has been imparted onto the stone by removing the high spots. And often, so what you see here, I've got a low spot here, and I could, since that's not an area where I will be sharpening, I could just go ahead, but it's useful when you're starting. It's going to take a long time, even with these inexpensive stones, especially with razor sharpening, it'll take a long time before you grind your way through a stone. And having consistent starting conditions is what you want. With diamond plates, some of the stone will stay in the plate. This is especially true after you've sharpened. You'll get some of the stone. You'll also get some of the metal. Get yourself a brush and clean the plate. It'll keep the steel that gets trapped in there from rusting on the plate, and it helps to lengthen the life of the plate. Oddly, I have some plates that are well over 10 years old that look new as a result of just what you saw me do. Okay, so we now have a flat surface. We need to talk next about the position that you're going to use to sharpen. What I have here is not what I recommend. I have a cooking pan. I have a sink bridge. Here, I'll show you the sink bridge. There's a sink bridge there. Then I have a stone holder, and then I have the stone. The reason I have this is I've done knife sharpening for about 15 years, and I stand to do that, and this brings the sharpening stone to a height that's comfortable for me, and I can stand for hours and sharpen with a stone in this position. What you need to do is you don't need all this. What you need to do is you don't even need a holder. You need to find a way to get the stone off of a surface high enough that your hand, I'm right-handed, if you're left-handed it would be over here, but you want the surface to be high enough that your hand clears what the stone is rested upon. So an inexpensive way to do this that's just fine is to take a block of wood, put that on a table, put a towel, generally kind of a damp towel, on top of the wood, and then put the stone on that. A lot of people who hone razors sit while they hone, but the key thing is you want your sitting height, or the height that you're working to be related to the stone, such that movement back and forth is easy. You're not too high. Your hand is not too high above, and your hand is not too low, and your mechanical movement from the shoulder and elbow is comfortable. And that's all you need to think. For most people, or for a lot of people, sitting at a table where that's maybe equal to or a little below eating height is perfect. Okay, so we've covered flattening. We've talked, if it's a new stone, we've covered the height. If it's a new stone, you want to use the flattening plate right away. New synthetic stones typically have kind of a glaze on them that comes from manufacturing. And you want to get that glaze off because after you do this, the performance of the stone will be consistent from then on. The glaze tends to make the first use of the stone different from the way it's going to be. It won't perform as well, I guess is the better way to say that. So, lots of detail, but if you're starting out, these are all questions that I get all the time. So, we've got the glaze off, we flattened the stone. The next thing you do is, okay, so how am I, how do I start, right? So we're now going to actually get into how you start. And what I'm going to recommend is take your initial razor that is going to be your mule for sharpening. All you're going to do is run this thing for sharpening initially. This is not an heirloom item or a very special item. This is one that you're going to learn to sharpen with. So you're going to take this. Hang on, just a second. I'm going to put some water on the surface here. I'm going to raise just a little bit of slurry. And the reason you want a little slurry is, well, there's a whole bunch of reasons, but the reason I'm going to tell you is that it helps to, it's a scrubber for the top of the stone. As steel gets removed from your razor, it will tend to get embedded in the stone, and the slurry will the slurry will help to scrub that steel out of the stone. And now what I suggest is that you take your sort of mid-range 4,000 or 5,000 grit stone. I have the 5,000 grit stone here. And now just don't worry about what you're doing. Now you're trying to learn the strokes. So what most people do when they sharpen razors is they use one hand and they simply go back and forth and flip the razor. The recommended way to do this is to keep the razor on the stone, flip it on the spine, and then come down and go in the opposite direction, flip it on the spine, and simply work it this way. That's not my practice, so I'm not comfortable with doing it, but if you're starting, that's probably a good way to do it. And what I'm doing here are what's known as alternating strokes. So start with alternating strokes. I'm going to teach 3 strokes only. These are alternating strokes. I'm just turning it the way I would turn it. If what I'm doing is more comfortable for you, then, or if you're rotating on the spine and you're lifting to rotate and then coming back, what you need to know is that no matter how you flip it, you don't want to come down on the edge. You want to come down on the spine. So when I do this and turn this way, I'm lifting off the stone, but I'm leading. I'm coming down with the spine first and then the edge. Same thing when I'm going this way, spine first and then the edge. And I'm showing you, how this would look if you do the rotate on the spine. And again, I'm suggesting that you start this way. Don't worry about the edge. Right now you're worrying about the strokes. You can see how metal is getting embedded in this stone. That's another disadvantage of these advanced stones. These used to be called the super stones from Naniwa. Is that they load up with metal easily. The slurry helps to prevent that. If I didn't have the slurry on here, this would become much more pronounced. So anyway, do this. Get a feel for working the stone. Now, what you're trying to accomplish is when you come down, you want to have even pressure across the whole blade. And at first, that's going to be a little awkward to you, but because the tendency is going to be to sorry, the tendency is going to be to put a little bit more pressure on the heel than the toe. So if you're going to go with the one-handed method, just concentrate on pushing the whole razor into the stone as you move from one end to the other on each side. Just concentrate on making sure that you're getting as much as possible even pressure on the stone, on the whole edge, I should say. Now, what I would really suggest, and I'm going to just wash this off, what I really would suggest is that you use your other hand. If you're, I do recommend that you start on a flat surface instead of hand holding the stone. I'm not going to go into hand holding the stone. That is how I learned. Hand holding is this, where you literally hold the stone, and you have to do this such that you don't cut your hand, the hand that you're holding with. But you can hand hold a stone, and the advantage of this is you can, someday when you're using slurry, you can control where the slurry goes, and also it gives you a better feeling for what's happening with pressure on the edge as you're doing this. But for now, for starting, I'm going to suggest that you put the stone flat on the surface and put the razor on the stone and use your opposite hand to help to ensure that you're getting even pressure along the edge. Okay, the next question I get is, well, how much pressure do I use? And that's a big one. The answer to that question is you only need the answer to the question, I'll try to make it simple. Come down, put enough pressure that you can feel the edge moving across the surface. You can increase that pressure and then release that pressure and try to use. You don't want to gorilla this, and you don't want the pressure to be so light that you would be fluctuating the edge on the surface as you're moving across. Generally speaking, most people can simply set this down and put a little pressure towards the edge, and then they can feel, that's going to be enough. You can feel the bevel surface on the stone, and that's going to be enough. The stone's abrasive will do the work. All right. The reason I did the giveaway up front is I knew this was going to be a long video. Sorry about that. Okay, so I'm going to clean the stone. Because I've loaded up enough. This stone, the loading, when a stone gets loaded, it's not the end of the world. All it means is that where you see metal is where abrasive is not coming in contact with the metal of your razor. Okay, so still practicing. When you're comfortable with alternating strokes, the next thing you should get comfortable with is half strokes. And for all of these things, I did the alternating strokes straight on like this, with the edge orthogonal or at right angles to the edge of the blade, at right angles to the edge of the stone. I actually recommend that you do all your practicing with a slight angle. I'm not going to go into the reasons for that, but there are good reasons why a slight angle is helpful. So try to learn to do this with a slight angle of the blade on the stone. And the easiest reason to do this is it helps the blade fit on the stone. Now, the next stroke to learn is the half stroke. And the alternating stroke helps to equalize the work on both sides. The half stroke is really just an efficient way of removing material from one side and then the other. And so when you have generally on each stone, you want the stone to do its work of material removal, and we generally start by doing half strokes to get most of that work done rapidly, and then we move to alternating strokes to start to equalize the work on each side. And when we get into actually sharpening, I'll tell you how we'll be talking about how to analyze the development of each side of the razor. But for now, you're just learning the strokes, so get comfortable with half strokes on both sides. However, you're going to flip the blade. Again, remember to come down spine first. Gonna flip the stone. Always a good thing to learn is to flip the stone so that you work both edges of the stone equally. So learn your half strokes. Learn your half strokes. Again, I use more of an angle than most people, but I do recommend a little bit of an angle when you're doing your sharpening. And so the final stroke to learn, and again, we haven't really started sharpening yet. I want you to get familiar with holding and manipulating the razor. That's what this is about. Now the next stroke is the X stroke, and the X stroke, you'll see a lot of people do the X stroke like this. I'm exaggerating, but they'll do this. The problem with that is that the idea with the X stroke is that as you move the razor, you move pressure from the heel through the center of the blade and then to the toe, and you're lifting ever so slightly on the razor as you do this. The way I suggest that you do an X stroke, the problem with that is that notice that the heel's left the party right away. I have a little motion on the heel of the razor. The toe is still attached, and it's not off the stone. And as I move pressure, I've now got the heel off, so I did a little bit of abrasion on the heel, and now as I move, I'm getting abrasion with my pressure is here, but the toe is still attached to the razor and is on the stone. So look at how much time this toe spends on the stone relative to the heel. So when you do an X stroke, a way to counteract that problem of uneven wear is to go down the stone, and then as you get towards the edge, do your X, where you move the pressure. So constant pressure, and then now I'm moving pressure from the heel to the toe. And this takes a little doing. This is one you'll want to practice. All right, so back and forth, those are the 3 strokes that you're going to need. Now let's get to, I'm going to clean up here, and then we'll get to sharpening. All right, so this is the 400 grit side of the Advanced combo stone here, the coarsest in the two stones. I'm going to use that to actually start sharpening this razor. And before I do that, or at least I'm thinking about using that, because I think I might have a lot of material to remove. But before I do that, let me test the edge. So testing the edge is going to be an important part of the sharpening procedure, because this is an important area in which you get feedback on your development of the edge. So I'm using a polystyrene packing peanut. These tend to have an S shape. Sometimes they have an M shape to them. There we go, there's the M. What you don't want, if you're using a packing peanut, you don't want one of these biodegradable ones. They simply they don't have the right kind of skin for this. When you use a packing peanut, what you're trying to do is to break the skin, use enough, determine how much pressure it takes to break the skin. I'll go into testing how to use the packing peanut as we start to get into the sharpening a little bit. There are options though that I would recommend if the polystyrene is not available to you. You can use a cherry tomato. Just use one that's not too ripe, one that has good firmness to the skin, because again it's the pushing through the skin is how you're testing, and you're evaluating how much pressure it takes to push through the skin. So a cherry tomato that's pretty firm. You can also use, a good way to test is to use arm hair, and how the razor feels as it's shaving arm hair, and then later there are other tests that you can use, but when you're beginning, you can just how well does it shave arm hair. I think personally I think that's a little bit more of an advanced thing. The other method is to put the razor on your fingernail very lightly and drag it across your fingernail. Now this razor drags across my fingernail without stopping. If the razor was sharp, it would drag across, it would stick. As I put it on the fingernail and started to try to move it, it would stick. And I can test the sharpness of the edge along its entire length by setting it down and trying to move it. If it sticks, you don't want to drag the whole thing when it sticks, so you want to see, oh, stuck, and so on, and that would give you an idea of how evenly sharp the razor is. So those are the methods that you can consider. When the razor bounces off the packing peanut, as this one does, I know it's pretty dull. So the first order of business in sharpening, and finally we're getting to sharpen here, is to start removing metal. I'm going to, hang on, I need to get a Sharpie. All right, so when you're starting out, you can get a Sharpie, or should get a Sharpie, and mark the edge. Mark the edge with the Sharpie. It's permanent marker, but it will come off with isopropyl alcohol. So don't worry about marking up your $11 razor. So you just just mark the edges. And the trick with the Sharpie Trick is that where Sharpie gets removed is where you're also abrading material. So this helps you to analyze both the razor and your stroke on the stone, and really that's all the information that you get. We're going to flatten. I just flattened this stone, but I'm going to do it again because I want to show you something else. With new stones, when you flatten them, you want to chamfer the edges. This helps to prevent the edges from chipping and gives you a nice transition from the flat corner. Okay, as I said before, I'm going to raise a little slurry on the stone to help prevent it from loading up. We have the Sharpie on the edge. Going to put some water on the stone. I have some water here, but you could use a faucet, whatever you wanted. Okay, so we're finally going to go. When you start, generally speaking, you want to start with half strokes. Just do you don't need to count. Just do what to you is the reasonable amount on each side of the razor. Then you want to look at the edge. Now you can see that not only was the razor lying flat. Let's see here. I'm catching the entire edge. There's a little bit that I didn't catch on the toe. Let's see what it looks like on this side. On this side, this razor did not lie particularly flat, and that's showing up. That's showing up by Sharpie removed here, but not here. Now I know how to deal with that, and you can too. The trick to dealing with that is to put pressure on that, or to roll up slightly. But when you're beginning, so now you can see. Now you can see I've removed Sharpie there. Hopefully you can see that. Yeah. So you can see I've removed Sharpie. I've actually removed Sharpie along the whole edge here. And so if it's a small variation like that, you can do what I did. If not, don't worry about it. You're learning to sharpen. Work on the edges that you can reach using your standard strokes. All right, so we know we're covering the whole edge. We're going to go from side to side using half strokes. We're working at a slight angle. And my choice of using the 400 instead of going, normally people will tell you to start your work on a 1000 when you have to, what's known as set a bevel. When you have to go from dull to the first level of sharpness, you do that with a stone that will do the work most quickly. And your coarsest stone does that work most quickly, and that's why you choose it. I've chosen the 400 because these stones are relatively slow cutters, and the time that I'll spend on this 400 is equal to the time that I might spend on a 1000 grit stone that has higher abrasive density. Now, now I want to do half strokes. And now I'm going to do some X strokes. And now we're going to answer the question of how long do I need to spend on this stone? And the answer to that question is until the edge is sharp. How do I know if it's sharp? Well, I have lost my Sharpie. I've lost my packing peanut. So hang on while I get another. So I know that the edge is sharp when I can break the surface of the packing peanut with not a lot of force, but some force. If I can break the surface of the packing peanut, which I can't, then I know that I can leave this first stone. It doesn't have to be a light pressure, but I need to be able to break the surface with a reasonable amount. Right now I'm pushing pretty hard and I'm not breaking the surface anywhere, so I need to go further. I'm going to do just what you saw me do, but I'm going to I'm not going to make you watch that. So when you're sharpening, one of the things that you want to let the razor tell you is you want to watch how the slurry is acting on the edge. I'm going very slowly here to show you that on this 400 grit, what I want to make sure is that the razor is pushing all the slurry ahead of it. If it's leaving some behind, then on that side is turned up a little bit. And so that side, so if this side was turned up, it means I need to do a little bit more work on the side that's turned up in order to move it back to straight under the spine. So if you see both sides moving the slurry in the same way, then the edge is straight under the spine. And this is why you don't have to worry about counting and doing the exact same number of repetitions on each side. The behavior of the razor on the stone will give you an indication of how you're doing. All right, let's see how we're progressing here. Okay, so we're finally pushing into with some force. I mean, it's a 400 grit stone, but I'm able to push into the packing peanut, whereas before I could not. With a little bit of force, it makes a popping sound, and that tells me we're done with this stone. So I'm going to move now. Now I have sharpness. I have the basic shape of the edge defined, and I'm going to move now to the 2000 grit stone, and the goal here is to take that shape and refine it. So at this point I have the shape that I want, but I have a pretty wide apex. And now what I want to do is with finer grit abrasive, I want to narrow that. And the way that'll happen is I'll be reducing the width of the blade a little bit as I do this, but what will happen is that apex will come together, will move back and then come together. And the finer abrasive allows for that to happen. So that's what we're going to accomplish on this stone. Before I go any further, we should start talking about looking at the scratch pattern. I think what I'll do is work on this stone using the same method. What you would do would be to mark the edge using Sharpie to make sure you're covering the whole edge. Do about the same amount of work on each side, just as you saw me do on the 400. I'll do it here. And then we're going to look at the scratch pattern, because the scratch pattern gives you clues that also helps you to know how you're doing in your sharpening effort. So all I'm doing is just the same procedure. Flatten the stone. I'm going to leave a little slurry on the stone to help keep it from loading up. And then I'm going to go through this half strokes. The finer grit stones load up more quickly than the coarser grit stones do. That's because the surface of the stone itself is a little less bumpy, so there's more surface area of binder that the razor comes into contact with. So you can see I'm doing the bulk of my work here with half strokes. Now I'm going to use alternating strokes. And I'm watching the slurry. Note that I'm still pushing the slurry ahead of me. And some of it is easily coming up over the edge on this side. Not so evenly coming up on this side, but I am pushing it ahead. So what's happening? What's that about? Well, if you remember, it's this side that I have to accommodate a slight warp in the blade. That's not something you need to worry about. So now I'm doing my half strokes. Now I'm going to do my X strokes. And just do them in that order. Again, watching, making sure that always pay attention to the slurry and how it's acting on the blade. You want it to be easily rolling up over the edge as you do your half stroke, as you do your X stroke. Okay, let's take a look. Check our sharpness. Now, if we're done on this stone, we should still be able to poke into the packing peanut or cherry tomato or whatever. We should also have stick. Yep, and we do. We have stick. It's sticking on the nail. But now it should be a little easier than before, and it is. Yep, it is. Okay, before I go further, I said I would teach you how to use the packing peanut or cherry tomato method. And the idea is that you bring the razor up to the surface and push and push. It's a little harder for me to do at this angle. To push into the skin of the peanut. There we go. If you push into the skin of the peanut, that's the hardest. That's the best test of the edge. If you slice, it's always going to be easy to slice. That's the best way to cut. most efficient way to cut is to slice. The least efficient way to cut is to push, and that pushing gives you the best test of how your edge is doing. Now, the other nice thing, do it in across the entire edge, and if the pressure is the same that you have to apply to break the skin, then you know you have pretty even sharpness. If you don't have even sharpness, then the area that's not gets a little bit more work. When you're starting, don't worry so much about evenness. You just want to go through this process a number of times. But after doing this 3 or 4 times and you're comfortable, then yeah, if you're comfortable, then you can start thinking about making sure that your sharpness is even. Okay, let's test again. So the next thing is, in terms of going from the 2K, when you think it's done, when you pass the test, you think you've passed the test, do a little bit more, and then retest. Okay, that's pretty good. And if it gets a little better, then you can decide that you've pushed the edge as far as it wants to go on that stone. So now we're going to go to the next stone, which is the 5000 grit on this sequence, and I'll be back when it's all set up. Now we're back to the 5000 grit stone, which is where we started learning about strokes, getting familiar with them. And now I want to talk about scratch pattern. You can use the pattern on you can learn to read the pattern on the bevel to determine whether your sharpening is progressing correctly across the whole edge. What you want to see is an even scratch pattern that goes from the top of the bevel all the way to the apex, and you want to see that same scratch pattern from heel to the center to the toe. I'm going to show you a microscope video of the center section of this razor now. And that's what you want to see. You want to see that type of scratch pattern everywhere that you're sharpening. The fineness of that scratch pattern will change as the abrasive size reduces. So the scratch pattern from the 5000 grit stone will be finer than the scratch pattern from the 2000 grit stone. And you don't need a microscope for this. You can use a simple loop, or you can use a little handheld microscope. And what I did was to use a very inexpensive microscope, digital microscope that magnifies about 50 times. So that's what you saw in the video. All right, so now we're ready to do the same exact procedure that you saw on the 2K. We're now going to do that on the 5K. Get it wet, raise a little bit of slurry. and go to town. Half strokes. Again, I haven't changed the pressure. I'm using the same pressure that I told you to use at the beginning, coming down, just meeting the stone, and using a not firm but a medium pressure against the edge. Half strokes at a slight angle. Alternating strokes, watching the slurry. This is what you want to see. You want to see the slurry easily come up over the edge, and you want to see no slurry left behind. So behind is dry, and it's easily coming up over the edge, and behind is dry. Now I'm going to do, now my goal is to do enough strokes to replace the scratch pattern from the 2000 grit stone with the scratch pattern from this 5000 grit stone. So that's the purpose of, I have behavior of the slurry that I want to see already using half strokes. And now what I want to do is just work further to make sure that I've replaced all of the 2000 grit stones scratch pattern with the 5000 grit stone scratch pattern. This also helps to get the most out of this stone in terms of narrowing the apex as far as this stone will allow. I'm going to go to X strokes now. Okay. Now we're going to test. This should be better, and it is. Much less effort is required now. It's almost effortless. Coming off the 5000 grit stone, it's now almost effortless. So I would say I'm ready to move forward, but what I'm going to do though is to do a few more laps on this stone to push it just a little bit, and then I'm going to go take another microscope video of this edge so you can see the difference between the scratch pattern on this edge and the scratch pattern on the 2000 grit stone. So I'm doing alternating strokes to push, and then I'm doing X strokes too as the final finishing strokes. That's the kind of behavior of slurry that you want to see with an X stroke. You want to see it dig in at the heel, move across the edge, and continue all the way to the toe. Okay, let's check again. I dry the blade, by the way, before testing with the peanut, again, to be consistent. That's about the same as it was. So I'm thinking there's no more for this stone to give. Okay, I'm going to think that there's just no more for this stone to give. And I'm going to take the video, and I will be back to finish up on the 10K stone. In the previous video of the edge that I took, I forgot to mention the most important part. I talked all about the scratch pattern, and you just saw the scratch pattern coming off of the 5000 grit stone. But the most important thing is to look at the edge itself. You want that edge to be a smooth shape with very few noticeable teeth. As the grit gets finer, then you want to have no visible teeth, especially at a 50x magnification, which is what I'm showing you using that microscope. That outline of that apex wants to be a very smooth line across the field of view. So here we are, we're with the 10,000 grit stone now, about to do our final process on the stones. So I'm raising a little slurry. Adding a little water because we want this to be a very soupy solution here. We don't want it to be like a paste. Same procedure as before, half strokes. How do you know if you're using too much pressure? I'd say another guide that you can use is, does it feel like you're gliding the edge across the surface of the stone, or that the stone is offering a lot of resistance to movement? The less resistance to movement that you feel, the lighter your pressure. So maybe that's of help, maybe not, I don't know. As we get to the finer stones, you tend to use more alternating strokes. It really doesn't matter as much, but you've done at this point almost all of the work is done, and you're going for as much refinement as you can. You will have done any equalizing of the edge, should have, equalizing of getting the edge under the spine. All of that should have been done on the first stone or two. Really done, majority of the work's done on the first stone. You might do some tweaking on the second stone. I'm going to do some X strokes. Watching, as always, watching the slurry. So I haven't mentioned it, but something to keep track of. It's very easy to pull even when you're doing alternating strokes or half strokes, it's very easy to forget about the heel. But the reason you want to not forget about the heel is you want even wear across the whole edge. If it's not even, then that is a problem that compounds over time. You'll tend to do more X strokes when you're finishing. But there really isn't a... The X strokes help to reduce something called burr. I'm not going to get into much more than that right now. It's just, you know, your first sharpening, and you've been with me a long time in this video already. Now we should have, now our edge should be pretty good. And the edge is pretty good. It's just gliding in almost soundlessly. There's some areas on this edge that are not good, but the majority of the edge is where you would want it to be. There's an actual problem right here at the heel that I didn't talk about, but it relates to this particular razor. But the rest of the edge is just gliding into the packing peanut. That's where you want it to be coming off the stone. As always, I'm thinking I'm done with the stone, so I'm going to just do a few more passes, and I'm going to do these passes on plain water. So this is the very final step to finishing, is to use plain water and use a lot of it. These stones in particular, this stone in particular, will load up. But I am going to, this is where you would lighten your pressure. And I'd say we're done. Test again just to see if it changed. It's okay if it didn't. Might have to get another peanut. This one feels as if it has some adhesive in that area. There we go. It maybe came off some packing tape. All right, I'm going to call that done. I'm going to pause, and I'll come back with the next step, which will be stropping. All right, I just showed you what the edge looks like after the 10,000 grit stone, also called the 10K stone. And you're probably wondering, oh, you know, I have this super duper microscope that can show you a magnification of 800 grit instead of 50. You're probably wondering what this edge looks like at 800 grit. I'm sorry, at 800 magnification. Let's take a look at that. All right, so you just saw what this edge looks like coming off the inexpensive stones at 10K. I haven't stropped this yet. And I'm going to show you how to strop. This is a bench strop. You'll probably do your stropping with a hanging strop. Technique is exactly the same. With a hanging strop, you'll want to pull it tight with your non-dominant hand, and then run the razor. You want to put the spine down, roll the edge down, and as it meets the surface, start moving. You don't want to move backwards. You always want the edge to trail the motion of the spine. And so this is what you'll do with a hanging strop. Generally, I would, if you buy a hanging strop, it'll normally come with some form of linen or flax. It's a good idea to do laps on that first to take care of any teensy tiny hanging bits of metal that just wouldn't let go during the abrasive process. I tend to not overstrop. Some people do. It's up to you in the end. I typically do about 20 to 25 laps on the linen. In my case, it's linen, and then about 40 to 50 laps on leather. So, what's a lap? Down and back is a lap. So if I were to do 3 laps, here's 1, 2, 3. When you strop, you want to make sure you have even pressure, not a lot of pressure. The action of stropping works with the motion. So you want even light pressure, and just move across the surface. Okay, that's it. That's it. You've been with me a long time. Apologize for that. I have nowhere near broken the surface of all the information that I can give you. So if you've made it this far, thank you very much. And feel free to ask any questions that you have in the comments. Bye.